The New York Rangers' next trade has been revealed as a shocking new report from an insider has revealed Chris Drury's plans for this year's trade deadline, and some of the players on this list will have Rangers fans fired up. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest, but before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, so if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, from trade rumors to trade reports, what's happening at the deadline, the playoff push this year, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, a new report dropped from Vince Mercogliano. And congratulations, Vince, and welcome back. We've dearly missed you over the last couple months, but again, congratulations, and I love your work, and I'm glad that you're back because some great insight just dropped in his latest article, and he said, what did I miss the last 6 weeks? JT Miller trade, back in the playoff mix, any changes to their deadline strategy, and what I'm hearing about it all. Now, a lot of this was a recap of the last month or 6 weeks or so, but there was a couple tidbits in here that I thought were very interesting. And the first thing we'll start with before we get to the trade stuff is, where is the youth? And you know, he has a point here. Over the last month or so, I've been like, hey, JT Miller, great ad, this is a great move, and I still think it is, right? But where is the youth gone? Lafreniere's kind of disappeared. You know, beyond that, what's happening with all of that? Filipito's gone now, right? So you're not young in that regard anymore. And Miller's $8 million average annual value shouldn't be the focus of criticism regarding the biggest trade the Rangers have pulled off under Drury, who up until this point had largely ridden a roster built by his predecessor, Jeff Gordon. Now, one other thought I thought was interesting in this, in getting a player of Miller's caliber for a package centered around a player who, you know, is riddled with injuries. Like, it is a fact with Filipino. Great player, right? Sure, he's a great person, all of that, but the fact of the matter is, in his young NHL career, has dealt with injuries already, is a very high risk, high reward trade, I think, to a degree, with the salary cap, obviously. And you know, it also puts an added focus on the organization's poor development track record in recent years. Now, listen, Filipino, I think he developed fine. I think he turned into a great NHL player. It's just the injury stuff. And I think that's outside of the actual hockey development of a player, right? So I wouldn't put that on the Rangers. But, you know, I'm not defending the organization. They do have a horrible problem developing young players. It is a real problem that they have to figure out. You cannot rely on signing free agents and trades forever. It's not going to get you anywhere. And we've seen that. They have not won a Stanley Cup yet. It's got them close, but they have not won a Stanley Cup. And, you know, where's the youth gone, particularly at the center position? Because they have Trocheck, they've had Trocheck. Obviously now adding Miller in at center. Who's the third line center? That's still a question mark. Could be Zibanejad. I like him better on the top line on the wing. I think he plays better there, and you know, for what he's been doing this season, less responsibility on the wing. So I think that he fits the wing better at this point. Will Cooley obviously is a standout, right? Second round success story. Looks like he'll be around long term, and I mean, he's been playing great. He's had a great season. It's dipped a little bit. I've noticed this since they traded his line mates, right? Since they traded his line mates, his production has dipped a little bit, but obviously 2 big goals the other night in Columbus to win them the game. Obviously, if you look down, Gabe Perreault, another great game last night as well, so he looks like he's going to be a player. Will the Rangers be able to develop him is the real question at this point. And Brendan Othmann should get his shot soon as well, but at what time, you know, at what point do you look at, you know, the fact that this team has a lot of veterans and maybe they should be passing the reins off, but passing the reins off to who, right? They have to develop these young players. Lafreniere looks like he's taken a step back this year, honestly, from last year. He has. So I think that was a great point from Vince. And obviously, if you look at guys like Riley Smith, Jimmy Vesey, Zach Jones, and Ryan Lindgren, that's who's on Vince's list to be traded at this year's trade deadline. Now, a couple of these names are very obvious to me. I mean, Ryan Lindgren, we've been talking about it for weeks. This guy, I love the player. I've said it in every single video. I've preferenced this every single time by saying I think he's a warrior, and I think that he's put everything on the line for this team. But if you really look at it, and you look at the eye test, you look at the analytics, right? Both suggest he shouldn't be a Ranger past this year's trade deadline. That's just a fact of the matter. Both of those numbers, both of those, you know, things suggest that this player should be traded at this year's trade deadline and certainly not re-signed, right? That is just the fact of the matter. Now, Riley Smith has popped up. I mean, they got him in the offseason as like a complimentary piece. I thought it was a great move at the time. Hasn't really panned out for him after Vegas with any of the teams he's been with, including Pittsburgh, right? Now, he's an interesting one. I haven't heard his name pop up until now, and it makes sense, right? Move off of him, put another young player in there. Maybe, after the college season, call up Gabe Perreault, see what he can do at the NHL level. A lot of teams do that. The Toronto Maple Leafs did that a couple years ago with Matthew Nice. Call him up and see what he can do. If he's going to make the jump to pro next year anyway, see what if he can make a difference. Get that roster spot open from, trade away Riley Smith for some assets. I'm sure some team would want him. He already has, retained salary, right? So I'm sure some team would want Riley Smith because he, is a winner. He has won a Stanley Cup, but where this team is going, you should try and get assets because you're not going to win a Stanley Cup this year with the New York Rangers. I don't think that's a surprise to any Rangers fans at this point. I don't think you're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. So trade these players so the young players can come in for a potential playoff run this year, whether it's one round or two. Get that experience, and then you're moving towards the future. I think that's the way you got to go. Trade Riley Smith, trade Ryan Lindgren, get assets for them because you're going to lose them for nothing in the offseason anyway, and then you can put young guys like Zach Jones. A lot of people are going to roll their eyes at that again. He's even on this list. He might actually get traded. He hasn't played a lot over the last couple months, but you can put a guy like that in that position, or you can use those assets that you get in a return for, Riley Smith, Ryan Lindgren, guys like this. You can, put that, package that together and go get a actual difference maker. So I think that's the move for the Rangers this year. And again, you can look at the stats, you can look at the eye test. This is a guy, happy birthday, by the way, Ryan Lindgren. I know this is terrible to be talking about you this way on your birthday, but, he plays a lot of minutes. He plays in a lot of different situations. Maybe there's something to be said about the guy he's playing with. But again, I think he's played with Adam Fox for a long time, and he's looked good. This year, he has not looked good, but I think there is a team out there in a sheltered role that would like this guy, right? And then, if you're looking at Zach Jones, he's only played 28 games this year. I think he actually played more games last year, or he's on pace to play more games last year when Jacob Trouba was out. He looked better last year as well. But listen, if he's going to get better, he needs to play. And if he's not going to play here, trade him for assets. Get something in return for him if he's going to be sitting in the press box. And then lastly, Riley Smith. He's had an okay season, right? Like his role has really diminished, and I thought he was going to be more for this team. He has 26 points in 54 games. This is a guy I definitely think you look at trading at the deadline along with Ryan Lindgren. It doesn't have to be the same trade, but this is a guy I think you trade to get assets. You can flip those assets to acquire somebody right now, or use them as draft picks and call up young guys. Maybe Gabe Perreault gets a shot, like I mentioned, after his college season. So I think that's kind of the route that they should go with everything at this point in time. And from Peter Baugh as well, what we know and what we think about the Rangers at the Four Nations face-off break. I thought this was interesting in his article as well. What we know, there will be a market for 3 of the Rangers pending UFAs: Ryan Lindgren, Riley Smith, and Jimmy Vesey. And Jimmy Vesey is a guy I didn't really touch on in this video too much, but he's another name that I wouldn't mind moving off of personally. I mean, I don't think he's made that much of a difference. I think that you have a great fourth line when Adam Edstrom is healthy, with him, Carrick, and obviously Matt Rempe, who honestly has looked good since he got suspended. He's looked pretty good and effective. He's really, taking it back a step. Obviously, he's not running through walls anymore, or running guys through walls, I should say. But the appetite is there to bank some assets rather than use these 3 for a playoff push. Listen, you might not even make the playoffs, and even if you do, younger guys should be playing there to usher in this new era, right? And not a full-on new era, because obviously you just traded for JT Miller and Trocheck's still here and stuff like that. But you're going to need to use younger players. Jacob Trouba's gone, right? Barclay Goodrow's gone. That little era that you had the last couple of years, that's gone, right? Let's start using younger players and put them in positions to try and, sink or swim, right? See how they do in the playoffs. They need that playoff experience. It could help them in the future. So I don't think that's the move to keep these guys for a playoff push. I think that's not it. I think they're definitely going to look at trading probably all 3 of these guys at the trade deadline, if I'm being honest. And again, Lindgren would be the biggest return. I think that was, a lot of people are sharing that sentiment. I think Vince Mercogliano would agree with that. I think that obviously Peter Baugh is saying that here. I think a lot of people would agree that Ryan Lindgren, out of all these players, would probably have the best return. So he should be the first one, I think, to go. Because again, in a sheltered role, I think a lot of other teams would want him. Like if he was a 5th or 6th defenseman on the Rangers, he's playing top line minutes, right? So I think that is the move for Ryan Lindgren, and obviously Chris Drury. And before we move on, the Four Nations face-off kicks off tomorrow, so good luck to all the Rangers playing in that. Obviously, Vakanainen's playing. He got the call, right, because there's some injuries there. Adam Fox is playing, Vincent Trocheck, Mika Zibanejad for Team Sweden, Chris Kreider, and, of course, JT Miller. So a lot of invested interest with Team USA for Rangers fans, and it should be a pretty good tournament. And I wonder, depending on who they play with on Team USA or who's having a good tournament, Chris Drury is going to be keeping his eye on this tournament, not because he has a bunch of players in this tournament, right, which is pretty impressive, but also because who am I going to trade for at this year's trade deadline? Or if am I trading for somebody, or maybe talking with GMs who are there, right? Something is going to go down very, very soon. It's going to be very exciting. And I want to hear what you have to say in the comments about, obviously, who they might move off of. I think it's going to be probably Ryan Lindgren first. I think Riley Smith shouldn't be on this team either. I think that they have to get some type of asset back for him. Doesn't make sense to keep him on the team for a playoff push. Might not even make the playoffs, right? I still think they will, but that just doesn't make sense when you look towards the future if you're going to lose that guy for nothing and you're going to bow out in the first or second round, right? So I think that is the move. So let me know in the comments what you think, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.